another draft physics video. Mostly comments, partially maybe, and I just want to go over some general ideas, some more ideas I suppose on momentum and gravity, and there's a lot to it, you know, in terms of understanding what we are as mediums, layers of mediums, and mediums are essentially solids under tension. The stuff is either it is glued together by what's always the external pressure, but that's what it is. It's a pressure, and everything that moves, everything's position is cause and effect, in the sense there's force that's making things move. They don't move for no reason. They move because there's stuff pushing them, and any change in the external pressure is going to create a change in the internal dynamics. It's going to be transferred into the internal system. So, you know, it gets so deep. You know, you can't just say, look at us and say, okay, we're just a collection of atoms, because the atoms are in such different environmental conditions, different mediums. The blood cells that are flowing through the body are not locked as rigid as the tissues. And the molecules, it depends on what molecules they are and how tight their bonds are. Some have loose bonds, some have tight bonds. There's hard substances and there's soft substances. And all of that has to do with how much force there is, how much stuff there is in between the stuff, as I've attempted to point out. This, you know, how much force there is between things and how much force is being allowed to push on things is what's dictating how tight those bonds are. So hard things, you know, have low pressure between them, high pressure around them. They're tight, and you can't, you have to apply a lot of force in their local area to break them. And you know, just think about how hard a piece of steel is, and everything holding it together is the force pushing things together, and the absence of it between them, or the presence of it, in the sense that they can't get any closer, they can't go any further, they're bound. And I've used illustrations like magnets. If I took magnets of all the same pole and laid them flat and they couldn't flip, you can understand that there would be a tension between all of them. They'd be repelling each other. And that if I flipped the center one and I had a ring of little magnets around it, that they'd all be attracted to the center, but at the same time, to move forward, they'd have to get closer to each other sideways. And that sideways force or pressure would stop them from going forward. So they would be, even in spite of the fact that there was a pressure gradient that said move closer, because there's a repulsion in the ring won't allow that to happen. You know, and these are the kind of things that are holding molecules together, and that when two molecules stick to each other, they bond based on how that pressure is, how much pressure there is in terms of how close they get, and you know, once they're established in a position, how easy it is to get out of that position. And you know, that'll dictate the hardness of a molecule. Anyway, I didn't know if I wanted to go that far, but so I'll just read some of these comments. But you know, people are just so glued to this. You know, I'll just, you know, I'll do this short list. You know, I'm going to make a long list eventually. I really need to. You know, of all the stuff they're saying, this is just unrefutable. You know, we have this model, we're happy with it. You know, it's you know, spectacularly successful, and therefore we don't need to fix it. And so they have this concept of bent space, okay, that just takes all of the force that is gravity. That means all of the power that is holding galaxies together, that holds the planets to the sun, that does all of that stuff. All of that, it holds the moon around the earth. All of that force is now put into some other dimension. It's supposed to be another dimension. See, but this is the hypocrisy. You know, if you accept Einstein's definition of bent space, there would be, Einstein never speculated about any idea of creating bent space, creating it as if it was a force. It's supposed to not be a force. And then when they did this gravitational wave thing, they came up with this idiotic notion that they converted three solar masses, three masses the size of the sun, and they converted it not into energy as we know it, but into bent space. They somehow converted it into a field that they say exists. And again, those fields are supposed to be like grid work, that something just travels through. Matter's not supposed to be made out of bent space. You're not supposed to be able to convert matter into bent space. So even that conflict isn't dealt with any. Your scientists aren't saying anything. They're just saying, okay, yes, well, we can play this game. They do this in nuclear physics. They have a whole chain in the terms of creating certain elements inside of suns, and the whole thing is premised on the idea that they borrow energy and then give it back later. So they don't have a source for the energy, they just borrow it and then they give it back later. That's all okay with you people. Alright, so you have bent space, this huge amount of energy taken out of physics and converted into some sort of notion that empty space does something, and that tells matter what to do. And then the matter, by moving, tells the bent space what to do. And this is all okay with you. This sounds, sensible. And my argument would be, of course, that this force of gravity, which is the most expansive force, is the force that does all this other stuff too. It's magnetism and it's light and everything. Everything is just a form of gravity. All the forces. And so that's how you unify. So forget unifying with bent space, you'll never do it. So as long as you keep bent space, you're never going to unify anything. So, well, I mean, maybe you will if you can convert matter into bent space by the new rules. Alright, then they got this term vacuum energy. That's okay with you. Idiotic notions like, well, the absolute nothing has energy. That automatically creates some sort of thing. And that's like string theory or something. That's just saying that everything's already a rubber band and it already has a vacuum stretch or something. Like there's some kind of zero energy. So that's okay with you. That's all logical and sensible, and that doesn't, no bell goes off in your head saying that's virtual photon. That's okay. Sure, why not? They do something and then they just disappear. It's convenient. Heisenberg uncertainty principle, just this idiotic idea that the only place where all this magical woo-woo things don't know where they are, stuff happens, happens to be the smallest stuff, the stuff we can't see, and that somehow the stuff thinks that every time you're going to interact with it, that's somehow cheating because you're measuring it, and if you try to measure me, I won't let you have the right answer. I mean, it's so convoluted. It's such a silly construction. It doesn't make any sense at all. Why would we assume the answer to be there's no answer? I mean, it's, I'd rather people make up unicorns or gods than to pretend there's no answer. I mean, that's just silly. There's no position. There's no velocity. There's no condition that the thing is in. Even though everywhere else where it doesn't interact with something, it moves quite reliably in straight lines. You turn your laser beam on and the light, we know where it's going. It doesn't go to Pluto. It only decides to go to Pluto when it's going to interact a slit or something. Then all of a sudden there's a possibility it's going to Pluto. I mean, Huygens, just completely contrived and made up. No evidence of it existing at all. This idea that this wave thing of light just creates this radar stuff in front of it, this new wave, and that the new wave isn't really it, it's just a synthesis of its essence. And the new wave does all this interacting and tells it where to go. I mean, that's okay with you. Oh, okay. entanglement, spooky action. Does this make sense to you? Entangle. Yeah, put the real word in there. You know, that photons are communicating with special forces, ESP. Some kind of ESP is in the universe, and photons have it. I mean, this doesn't sound like something a con artist came up with. Anyway, alright, then no explanation from physics at all about the acquisition of velocity and the maintenance of it in terms of inertia. What exactly happens? How does matter manage to move all of its little bits when we know all of those little bits are in positions, and all those little bits have to actually move their position in space for this pin to move? All the little atoms, all the little electrons, all the protons, all the neutrons, all of them have to move, or their representation at least. See, I'm sort of arguing this is just a pattern of polarization. That's all this is. It's an arrangement of polarization. Red, blue, green, well, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue in different arrangements. And all that really happens is the pattern moves. That is, the little red and green bit, the little red and blue bits, or red and black bits, just migrate the pattern in the sense that they exchange. You know, a green bit here gets exchanged for a green bit that's going to end up over here. The field is producing them, and it's just going to exchange the one for here for the one over there. Eventually, they're just going to exchange, and through the exchange the pattern is maintained. But see, now that's complicated, and these people will just mock the idea that somehow this doesn't get complicated, that there's layers to this. Yeah, of course there's layers to it, and you have to have a little bit of thoughtfulness in attempting to describe those different layers. But you know, anyway, these people, you people are you're disgusting. So anyway, physics gives you no explanation for how, say, an electron going around an atom in this direction at, say, half the speed of light by their estimations, some of their estimations, very fast, especially in heavy molecules, heavy atoms. How can that electron also go in that direction another 3/4 of the speed of light or something? How would that be possible? Then the electron would have to go faster than the speed of light. See, those kind of questions aren't answered by physics. Okay. So what is this thing I said here? Oh, well, instantaneous. People keep talking about these instantaneous things like gravity or something. You're just like, don't you understand? Instantaneous destroys cause and effect. Instantaneous makes a mockery of cause and effect. It breaks all the rational chains. So instantaneous would mean that everything has its cause and its effect at the very same time. You don't understand how that just would make the universe not work? I shouldn't even have to explain that. Alright, so that's the short list. Alright, so now I'll read these useless comments, really. People are just such obnoxious jackasses. Alright, so Dr. Samuel Hayden. Now I don't know who, I guess he's doing a memorial to some dead doctor who did something, and so he calls himself the dead person. I don't know. Very, very strange thing to be doing, I think. You call this complex. Crude drawings. Okay, now, what's the difference? Newton, in his book, whatever, Publicia, blah, 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 blah. Book is full of drawings, idiot. There's nothing wrong with drawings. Drawings are illustrative. They make things visible. Lots of drawings of Einstein's gravity. So this is a crude experiment. It's got 34 million views. 34 million views for a piece of spandex that doesn't really, in any real way, illustrate gravity. is it's wrong. The dimple is wrong. Okay, there's no, this isn't true to the math in any way. And if I drop something off this edge and drop it in here, it won't either hit the thing or fly out the other side. No, it'll swing back and forth and get caught in there because there's friction and all kinds of problems. So you think it does the job, though. It explains gravity accurately enough. But my drawings don't explain forces being trapped, and those forces eventually being photons based on how close the two electrons get to each other would dictate how high a frequency these tons would be released at. And that to you is not a coherent drawing, but this is coherent to gravity. And bullshitting about your theory. Bullshitting how? By explaining a theory that unifies physics, and on top of that explains inertia and time dilation and basically everything that happens and why it happens as a physical explanation, with absolutely no gods and no woo and no magical secret things, no spooky actions taking place. Would love to see you pass even a basic college physics course. Laughable. Well, why don't you test me at, say, fixing something, repairing a car, or understanding a mechanical device. Put a mechanical device in front of me and see how long it takes me to figure out how it works. Physics now is owned by math. That's true. And yes, I don't do calculus. I don't derive equations. I don't do any of that crap. I care about the relationships between things, like the inverse square law. I, in fact, explained it in the last video, the video you're laughing at. I actually explained why it exists, why it happens that the force falls off, okay, so rapidly. I explained why. But it's laughable to you. And 9 people think that's a legitimate comment. That's, I don't know, camera failure. Completely random camera failure. So I guess this camera has to go in the shitty box. They're all fading on me, unfortunately. But I have a million of them, so to speak. Alright, so I don't know where it cut off, but hopefully it didn't cut off anything important. So anyway, just this laughable part. 9 thumbs up. Like, this is a meaningful comment, a meaningful rebuttal. And it's a good enough argument in defense of the fact that, yes, your physics can't even describe the simplest experiments accurately. They can't draw an accurate picture. I can show you Feynman's crude drawings. I can show you Lewin's crude drawings. I can show you the professor at Yale's crude drawings. And I can show you they're really sloppy and horrible drawings, actually. They're really bad drawings, even. I mean, structurally bad. Besides being inaccurate in what they're trying to represent, they're badly drawn on top of that. But they're okay, because they pass the tests. Alright, so now we have 2 new fields, the flat earth science and the flat universe science, the fart universe science. So, I don't know, he's making an accusation that somebody farted in my video. There's no fart in my video, so you're obviously a child. I mean, a clownfish kind of gives it away, but, I mean, what the fuck, idiot? I mean, you're an idiot. Okay, latest by Sir Gary is in Madman. Oh, that's just so funny. And your counter arguments again are just, that's how deep they are. And, that gets 3 thumbs up from the crowd watching these videos. I mean, why do you people watch these videos? I just don't understand. You must have, obviously you don't give a shit about the truth or physics or conversations or rational arguments. You just care about doing this, whatever this is. He insulted me at the end of the last comment section video. Yeah, with another the impronounceable name guy who is making these accusations that somehow quantum computing is on the move and it's almost here. And it isn't. Clearly quantum computing is moving forward. Clearly by what evidence? Again, You know, if you're going to buy every piece of propaganda they scoop you, okay, go ahead and believe it. And qubits are becoming practical enough for commercialization of a few prototype clouds based on them in Google, Intel, and IBM. Well, it didn't say that in the article. I haven't seen anything. So you claiming it exists, I don't see it, so whatever. Believe what you wish to believe. You accused me of being obnoxious when I said nothing of pompous nature, only because, well, you don't think it's pompous till you say clearly something is true and you provide no evidence. You point to an article that was meaningless fluff. There was absolutely no data in that article at all. Only because I assumed there was no way around the dishonest reaction to the implications. The dissident? No. What does it say? Dissident reaction. Well, again, the implications of what? So I'm just saying, every time an article is written, so you believe that 3 solar masses were converted into bent space. You believe that took place. You believe that concept is valid. And that's what Einstein believed you could do. Einstein believed you could convert matter into bent space, because they wrote it in an article. So it must be true. Oh, fuck. Well, the point is in no way complex. The point is in no way complex. So he's saying that gravity isn't complex. That the billions and billions and billions and trillions and zillions, I mean, an apple is to the earth what an atom is to an apple. The interactions of these incredibly dense molecular objects of different gradients of temperature and atomic weight, it's not at all complex to dissect specifically and accurately the forces that tie them together. Oh, okay. Not to mention, I'm always criticized when other people post simple yet informational animations or images. When did I do that? So that's a lie, doctor. So let's find out who Samuel Hayden is, and we'll find out he must be a lying piece of shit, because this guy's a lying piece of shit, right? That's the obvious assumption. I mean, where do you get that from? I pointed out animations that are not, so you don't think this, you think this is gravity. This is gravity visualized. You don't think this is not even close to real gravity. So, but you think it is. And you don't think anybody should even talk about how, well, that's really not how it works. Gravity won't do that. They shouldn't say that. They shouldn't point out how in real gravity, when you put your marble into the hole, into the dimple, it's flying out the other side, or it's hitting the thing in the center. It's not going to find an orbit. All right. Let's see. Well, the question is, no, where's the other comment? I missed one. Well, the question becomes, can the crude drawing be used to correctly? I don't know how I missed this one. Anyway, well, the question becomes, can a crude drawing be used to correctly explain some aspects of reality? A stick figure drawn by a child is often recognizably human. A crude drawn human, yes. But our brains immediately understand what the drawing is meant to represent. Could the same thing occur here with Gary's drawings? Fair question. Well, first off, the drawings aren't that crude. I mean, there's no other way to represent it. I mean, yes, I could make this a more perfect round thing, but I'm not even saying they're round anyway. But I mean, how else do you represent a frequency going back and forth? I mean, arrows is crude, but it's also explicit. It's pretty much the concept. It's a momentum. It doesn't need to have a shape of any kind. Fuck. Anyway. Well, the question is, can a crude draw? Okay, Nikki, the point is no way complex. Not to mention, the men always criticize other people. Simple yet informal animations or images. Okay, so again, that's just a lie. I don't criticize accurate images. I criticize inaccurate ones. Even calling simplicity grotesque at one point. Where? So again, just stated as a statement, not as anything else. Oh, you must be a defender of the crazy guy who's always talking about simplicity. Yeah, right. You're one of those people. You're a Teslaite, huh? Just more hypocritical stuff as usual. Yeah, more unsubstantiated accusations by liars. So as usual, way to go, liar. Disagreeing with is more than enough for him to rage, insult, and wish you a horrible death. Again, you're the assholes being rude, and you're saying I should accept your rudeness. I have some obligation to respect your authority on these subjects. You provide nothing. You give me no credentials. You give me no indication that you know how to do any physics at all. You give me no indication that you have any degrees that matter either. So what is your... Why do you have a right to be rude to me? And I don't have a right to say, fuck you. You want to explain that, fuckhead? He's totally a decent guy, definitely not an asshole like he calls so many other people. Yeah. Well, in many videos I've pointed out that I am an asshole, but yes, compared to you people, I smell so sweet. Okay, Dr. Hayden, now I see your point, but I still would like to know if you agree with the point Emendum is trying to convey with his crude drawings. Well, he won't get to the point of the video because he doesn't have any knowledge on the subject. I'm a sane person who acknowledges evidence proof. Okay, what is the evidence and proof? The precise predictions that match what really actually does. Well, that's exactly what I pointed out in the two-slit experiment, is the math doesn't even predict the actual result. And certainly in water waves, there's no connection between what you get with light and what you get with water. I mean, I've pointed these things out, and you're just pretending they haven't been pointed out. What precise predictions? Their predictions are sometimes 16% off. You tell me that's precise prediction? I mean, that was one thing I was reading about gravity. A margin of error of 16%. Well, that's not so bad, right? So, no, I don't accept his theory. I'm not asking you to accept the theory. You're the one saying there's not even an argument being made here, and that's just preposterous nonsense. Or any of the other thousands of unproven alt-science theories. And unproven, like what? Like Einstein's bent space is proven by what? What proves Einstein right? That space is actually bent. He's using a contrivance to duplicate the inverse square law. He's using bent space to do exactly what the external pressure would do. It's exactly the same thing it's doing, except my explanation has physics in it. Physical things happen. And his explanation has a vacuous, non-explained, infinite force. His gravity can go forever. My gravity is dependent on the field pressure. That's the extent. The absolute gravity is the absolute pressure of the field. Mine has a limit. His goes on infinitely. 400,000 solar masses. Yeah. Man, you're just such scumbags. Alright. Every one of the people who created these theories is supremely confident that their theory is right. Well, you seem supremely confident. You have a tiny amount of lensing images that are crappy. The lensing's in the wrong place to demonstrate that light moves in gravity. A tiny amount of evidence. And it's weak evidence. It's dirty. It's noisy. It's ugly. It has defects. And you're supremely confident that Einstein's right. How are you not the hypocrite here? And that all the other ones are wrong? I mean, obviously, there's a right answer. Evolution is the right answer to our origin. Catholicism is wrong. Buddhism is wrong. All this other crap is wrong. Evolution is correct. You can't figure that out? And that the official science is BS. Well, I've pointed out the BS part, And all you have to do is listen to some of these guys. Like I said, I played the deGrasse Tyson video for their book, you know, whatever, Welcome to the Universe. And the one guy just goes on to all this expansive nonsense about what he knows about what happened 10 billion years ago as the Big Bang was exploding. And, you know, all kinds of statements bold statements being made based on just absolutely no evidence except that, well, if we do it that way, our math adds up. And that is the official Science is BS. Does that remind you of anything? Well, this reminds me of Inquisitioners saying God is God because God says so. What are you doing besides that? Again, you're not providing me some huge description of all this really hard evidence you have for any of this stuff. I've pointed out how the evidence is weak, and I've gotten no counter argument to how it's strong. All I've gotten is insults from assholes like you. Could you specifically address what thing or things you find flawed about his theory? Well, he's not going to do that because he can't do that. He doesn't have the competence to do that. Anyway, so another unpronounceable name. The Earth is the ovite spheroid mass. Deal with it. You F.E. cucks. Well, that's enough of that comment. I'll delete you later, fellow. Oh, here's the guy that wrote the comment originally. Thank you for answering my question. I'm still getting accustomed to imaging gravity in this way, but I think I'm starting to grasp the fundamental axiomatic differences that characterize your model. I found this video helpful in clarifying what you meant by shadow gravity. Yeah, and see, the trick with the shadow is that I really want to get back to, this is what's really causing the gravity, okay? This here, all right? This idea that black force leaks out of the red things, red force leaks out of the black things, so it creates the low pressure. And the trick with gravity is that the sun is made out of P's and E's, okay? And the earth is made out of P's and E's. And so there is some reflection because sometimes a black leaves here and it reflects off an electron in the sun and comes back. So there's some reflection, and they can hit an electron on the earth and then go back again. So it can make 5 or 10 or 15 trips maybe before it falls out. So that's why gravity, okay, is a weak force in the sense that the very low pressure can't be created. So I mean, that's what's really causing it, because it's a nuclear force. I mean, all the forces are nuclear forces. All the stuff that's happening is happening to these things. None of the stuff that's happening is happening to this big stuff. It's always the little stuff. And even in the example I attempted to give with, say, the magnets, you know, you have a group of magnets, and so this one's positive, these are all negative. So these repulse each other, and these attract. The trick is, as I pointed out, is you can see the angle here. If this one tries to move in, you can see that would increase the force here and increase the force here. That moves them closer together. That means there's more of the, there's more of this happening. It gets more force between them as they move closer together. So they can't move closer together. So anyway, so the systems are all under tension. We're in an atmosphere that's under tension, high pressure. You know, it's pretty high pressure here on Earth. Then the interior is mediums, fluids and different things. They're all under pressure. They all have adhesion to each other, plus the external pressure. And so everything's under tension. So everything is in a model like this, where everything is in positions where there's limitations on how it can move. Like this whole thing can spin, but these individual pieces can only go like maybe like this. They can't go anywhere. They're trapped by the force is heavy here, pushing them here, and the force here is strong, saying you can't go this way, you can't go this way. You can't get closer here because you can't go either one of these directions. So this kind of tension is what everything is controlled by. And the point is that any nudge to a thing under tension means that the nudge goes through everything. If I push this electron, I'm going to push this electron. and this one's going to push back this way, and that's going to push this electron, that one's going to push back this way, and they're all going to push back. And so that's how force is transmitted through things, is because everything's under tension. There's no real empty space in the sense that there's no free space, because everything is shooting pressure at each other. Everything is tied, so nothing's really free. So even when you see a blood cell swirling around in the current of your arteries or something, it looks like it's free, but it's really not. It's being controlled by the medium, and the medium's being controlled, ultimately by these forces. But everything's under tension, and it's the tension, how the tension moves through these different mechanisms of tension. So this is one mechanism of tension. There's a different shaped mechanism over here, there's another shaped mechanism over here, but all of these are tied to each other. The molecules are tied to each other, then the compounds are tied to everything is tied to something else by the medium and the tension and the pressure. Anyway, I found this very helpful in clarifying what you mean by shadow gravity. It's absorption and radiation, the inverse square, and the kind of dynamics that a truly quantized system could produce. Yeah, absorption is the most general way to look at it. Is something goes in, movement has to come out, right? I mean, it's the conservation principle, and that makes it where you can illustrate it in a simple way of a shadow and just say, look, it's kind of obvious. If the Earth moves, it had to absorb something going this way to move. So the only way, because that's the only way it can move. It has to get the movement from something. A force has to make it move. So if it moves towards the sun, it had to use force to do that. It has the force. It used it. That means the force didn't go to the sun. It didn't go where it was going. So if it's moving towards the sun, it obviously ate stuff going towards the sun. It possesses it for the time of its acceleration. And you have to understand that time is a long time. If 10 tons go in, those 10 tons can take a long time to move a whole big giant Earth. It can take a long time for it to work through all of the tension between all of the things inside the Earth. All of those bits have to move. So it's like those 10 fish going this way have to hit all of the other fish through the tension and make all of the fish go a little bit that way. And that takes time, a lot of time. That's why we move so slow compared to the speed of light. Forces go the speed of light, and at that tremendous speed is converted into our incredibly slow speed, and that takes time because you're moving a lot of stuff. The mass is getting moved. Alright, and kind of dynamics that's truly quantized. There's a lot that must be unlearned in order to clear the mental space to properly consider gravity as an external pushing force. Yeah, well, I've had worked on that in terms of giving people reason to doubt the established crap. So, I mean, that's one of the obligations. If you want to explain evolution, you first got to, if somebody's a fanatically religious person, you got to give them some doubt that, look, you really think God would worry about whether Moses takes his sandals off to talk to a burning bush? I mean, really, there's nothing else higher on the agenda. Just when I think I've shaken them off, I still find some of the learned reflexes, assumptions of orthodox physics biting me in the ass on occasion. Yeah, well, so I guess I have the advantage is that I always found it doubtful that they had stuff right, because, yeah, just like I said, I go back to the photon. The original, it was just never made any sense to me to say photons are this thing doing this wavy thing in two ways. And what's a wavy thing? Oh, they don't believe in ether, but they believe something's waving through space. You know, fuck that. You definitely made some strong points, and I look forward to thinking and hearing more on the aspect of your theory. I suspect that this is the aspect of a new theory of gravity that many academic physicists will likely want to debate about if you get the opportunity. So it's definitely worth hashing out in detail. Well, I'm just saying it's been around forever, over 300 years in a sense. That's the irony of this, is that somebody else already thought of it 300 years ago. And the only problem was he wasn't able to deal with the heat problem, essentially, the friction problem created. And I got rid of that with the kinetic thing. So, you know, but yeah, it's an old idea, and it's the logic of understanding push being infinitely more reasonable as a elemental force than pull. I mean, just as a statement, I mean, I don't know how anybody who's a little bit logical wouldn't agree that if you're looking for the elemental elements, those are going to be the simplest elements. And that push is, you know, I hate to use the word infinitely, but it kind of is. Push is infinitely more cognizable as a mechanism than a pull. A pull is incredibly complex, no matter how you think about it. It's a thing that has to actually go out and grab something and pull it. It has to have biceps and triceps, and all kinds of things are necessary to do pull. Okay, until you understand, okay, good day, Gary. How do you explain the shape of the sun and moon planets of the solar system? I mean, that's just such a, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just a lame thing to even argue about. You know, to explain why things are circles in a high pressure is kind of, you know, obvious. Because, yeah, that's what they're going to do. I mean, as I tried to explain, is if you took a field of things, random things going random ways, there's a certain number of things that are going to hit you. And they're all going to hit you coming at a straight line. It's a straight line universe. So it's like asking the question, why does the light radiate out of the light bulb? You know, because, yeah, that's the way it works. You know, let's see, that's not a great explanation, but it's inevitable that it has to be round, because that's the evenness of the external pressure. But anyway, as I receive by your eye in comparison to a telescope. So again, that doesn't even make any sense. My eye sees a round moon, a telescope sees a round moon. I don't know what you're talking about. Until you understand, no, fuck you with this bullshit, that light does not travel, it has no need, you will be frustrated and rely on theories of the past. Well, fuck you. I mean, that's just, you know, you're going to make these extraordinary claims, okay? Oh, there's no such thing as photons, and they're just perturbations in the ether. Well, go ahead, prove your ether exists then. But what evidence do you have of that? No, you have zero evidence of that. Something travels. I mean, what the fuck? You're not going to call the thing that actually travels, you're not going to call it something? You idiot. Almost every light reflection in our visible universe is spherical. Don't you find that strange considering the different distances? I know, I don't even understand what you're talking about. We don't even see spherical things when we look at the sky. We see little sparkly things because we can't even resolve them because everything's bouncing around so much because of Brownian motion. They take away to get here are not elongated. Cheers. I don't even know what you're talking about. What would be? Why would it be elongated? If a train goes from New York to California, does it get elongated because it went a long way? So if it only goes to Chicago, the train stays short? What the fuck are you talking about? Well, you're not talking about anything. I mean, you're not relevant to my video at all. So what the fuck are you doing? What do you want me to say? I'm not going to say good day to you. Whatever the opposite of good day is. Bad day. Go away. Go away. Alright. Dunny Monster. The radiation from the shadow. So the shadow is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. No, I don't. I've already pointed out the electromagnetic spectrum is a lie, because actually none of the tons in it do anything electrical or magnetic. None of them can be bent by magnetism. None of them can do anything electrical. Electrons do electrical. That's why it might even be why electrical is in their name, electrical. It's because electrons do electrical. Yes, the tons are the force that move the electrons. Yes, that's how it works. But free, they're not electrical. They're only electrical when they make electrons do something. They're not electrical when they're just doing nothing in free space. Anyway, radiation from the shadow. Look, you want to play games with words. I mean, quite obviously what I'm saying is, I only have it written clearly in the drawings. So you don't want to pay any attention, that's fine. Less pressure, more pressure. Okay, that's kind of obvious. Very low pressure. So I'm clearly pointing out that it's the absence of radiation. Idiot. If the shadow is essentially an absence of light, how is it radiating anything? Well, obviously it's radiating. There's less stuff coming from one direction of a particular polarization, is the argument, jackass. So along with protons and gravitons, we now have shadowtons too, perhaps. No, it's nowhere in the argument is that what's being stated. So just play a game, because I might have said a statement a little bit wrong. That happens all the time in physics lectures. All the time somebody will say photon when they mean electron or something like that. So go ahead and be a prick. Well, you're not a prick, you're a cunt. A skanky, dirty, lousy, diseased one. This, of course, brings me to the question of what exactly is a shadow. So you don't understand what more pressure is or less pressure is. Pushing harder, pushing less hard. Ping pong balls bouncing between, going the same speed, and I make the distance they bounced, between two things, smaller or greater. You don't understand that there's more impacts when the two things are close together and less impacts when they're further apart. You don't understand that? Because you're stupid or something? Clearly it exists as a phenomenon, and if we assumed everything in the universe is made of particles controlled by fields, energy, how does that describe a shadow? Well, again, you say words like fields and energy. Obviously that's exactly not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing there's no field, there's just the particles. And you may call a bunch of particles a field, that's okay, but it doesn't mean there's a field that's controlling the particles. The particles are the controller. Are we talking anti-photon here as an explanation as to what the shadow is made of? Obviously not. I didn't say anything like an anti-anything in the video, so you're just making up shit. Are shadows even made of anything? They're an absence of something, that quite obviously something that isn't happening. It's being blocked. That's what a shadow is, blocking something. You don't understand that concept? Well, you're really dumb. If photons are particles or something, why do more of them bounce off a reflective surface like a mirror than, say, a less reflective surface? Why things reflect is based on the surface, and so what do you need to understand? Why some things are shinier than other things, or why things hit different electrons? I mean, you can, on the same surface, you can change how much reflects based on the angle of how the light goes in. So if I want to reflect all of the light off water, I just make it a like 28-degree angle or lower, and all the light reflects. None of it goes into the water. I mean, if you want me to explain the physics, I'll explain it as an interaction between photons and electrons have positions based on the atoms and the molecular structure of the surface, and water tension creates an even surface. I mean, a surface that's consistent. If photons are particles or something, why do more of them bounce off a reflective surface like a mirror than, say, less reflective surface? Well, obviously because they have to either hit, if they hit an electron or they hit a proton, it's going to make a difference in terms of what happens to them. And it depends on where they hit an electron. Whether they hit an electron in the side or they hit an electron on the top is going to make a difference. Whether they're hitting the electron into pressure or they're hitting an electron into a low pressure. So if it depends on where they're moving the electron, it'll decide how long it takes for the photon to be readmitted or to be refracted, that is, absorbed. You can't understand that either? Surely physical particles, be they photons or otherwise, would bounce off a surface the same way, being as they are particles making contact with a mass. What do you think a mass is? I'll give you a little news flash. You see, there's no such thing as a mass like, oh, here's a straight line, this is mass. See, a mass is a surface that has elemental nuclear bits. So there's protons and there's electrons, you see, and there's spaces between them and all kinds of stuff. So there's all kinds of different ways, there's all kinds of different things the photon can hit. You see that, idiot? And then it does different things based on what it hits. And based on how the molecules are structured. So if you go look up the periodic table, see there's a table of all the elements, and those 100 or so elements can make a insane number of different kinds of compounds, and each compound has a different shape of its molecular structure, and it's oriented in different ways, and it makes different surfaces when you polish the surface. Idiot. Surely physical particles bounce off. Why would a particle photon interrelate with a mass any different to any other particle? Well, I think I've already explained that. It's because it's made out of nuclear bits. It's not, there's no such thing as just a solid mass. Masses are made of atoms. Atoms are made out of electrons and protons, idiot. I'm not challenging your theories, but I would like to understand your thoughts on the phenomenon of shadows, as this aspect in particular I find perplexing. Well, I don't know what could possibly be perplexing about the idea of absorption of force being essentially a shadow. If I take something moving the speed of light going this way, right? So it's moving the speed of light going this way. And instead I put some mass in front of it. And so now it goes into the mass, and it has to move all of the mass. So now it has to, go through all the tension, all the rubber bands, so to speak, have to vibrate. So it has to vibrate all the rubber bands, and it takes a while. And so now the mass is moving this fast. So it took something going the speed of light, and it converted into something going kind of slow. And you could sort of understand that if the thing over here was waiting for the stuff coming the speed of light, hey, that stuff coming the speed of light isn't hitting me anymore, because this little slow thing is happening. This terribly slow thing is happening. And so I'm not getting any of my sun. I'm getting shadowed, because all of the little photons I was waiting for aren't getting to me. That's a shadow. Alright. Regards calculating any gravitational influence, I do agree with you that it is essentially impossible to make calculations assuming a fixed point in space. It's possible, it's just wrong. Okay, that's, there's nothing, it's not impossible to say, well, let's just put the sun in one place and then we'll do calculations for what happens over the next 10 minutes to the Earth, and we will just pretend the sun stayed where it was. And no, it didn't do that. You have to do the real difficult equation, which is you have to do the calculus to break it down to get a general idea of what's happening with both things as they're moving. So yeah, but that's all you can get is a generalization. Assuming a fixed point in space, because such a point doesn't exist ever. Well, of course things exist in position, so you could freeze the universe and everything would be in a position. So I don't see any argument there, but whatever, you want to play that game, fine. Yes, obviously there's no ability to freeze the universe, but I'm just saying there's nothing that isn't in a position theoretically every 0th of a second, 0.00000, 10 to the minus 4 million of a second, everything is in a place. Everything is placing influence on everything else, and this is a constant that is ever changing. Well, I don't know. Yes, but everything can only influence everything else through the process of interaction. And interactions take time. That's the whole point. It takes time to move something. With such variables, you can never repeat the experiment under the exact same conditions, so cannot predict the same outcome. Well, I don't even know what that has to do with any of this. You don't need to have exactly the same conditions to recognize a phenomenon like water going over a waterfall or something, idiot. Even another solar system, however far away, will be bounded by the solar system next to it and the forces they generate infinitesimally. Yeah, well, you don't need to worry about the infinitesimal for most of these questions and answers, and you can get pretty reliable answers without worrying about farting fish. You just don't need to include every piece of energy. That's the problem with mathematics. It causes paradoxes by viewing all things as a point. So it's the same kind of argument again. It's not all mathematics that do that. I'm just saying that's quite obviously not a very good answer. Look, I saw the electric universe guy who was making the argument against black holes. And he was making a very bogus argument where he was pointing out how that there's only a black hole when there's an object, in the math. And obviously you can't measure anything without measuring it against something. So obviously the math requires there to be something else in the equation besides the black hole. The black hole can't be a black hole unless there's something. You have to always have a test particle. The same thing is true in doing electrical math. You always have to create a test particle to figure out what anything is. Yes, you have to have two things in the equations. So that doesn't invalidate the existence of black holes by playing some, oh, I got you because your math is dependent on there being two things in the equation. Well, that doesn't disqualify the math. I don't believe in black holes, but I'm just saying that's not a valid reason to discount the existence of black holes, is to play some stupid I got you game because the math doesn't work unless there's two objects in the math. I mean, that's just a bullshit reason to discount the math. All right, and so, I mean, a point has no quantity and no time. Well, that's stupid. You can make a point and you can say this is where it was going and this is how much it weighs. You can write that right down, right where the point is. Of course it has a future interaction potential. And you can know those things and you can write them down on a piece of paper. It's going 50 miles an hour. I can send a train off to California and then I can freeze it for a moment in time, and I could just write next to it, it's going 50 miles an hour and it weighs 2 zillion tons. I mean, fuck. I am looking to... So the gravity thing is, the black hole thing is an interesting conceptually, just because it points out how, with the problem with the math is it creates these mathematical models, is because they're not reliant on some kind of real mechanism. And so the unreal mechanism can do all kinds of infinite things that the real mechanism, there's no reason to think it has an infinite supply. So there's no rational reason to really think you can compress matter infinitely small. I mean, there's a reason to think that's not possible. There's reason to understand why electrons don't like each other. And they don't like each other so much, and they like protons so much, in the sense that they are forced towards photons because of the low pressure. So the lowest pressure you can make is the pressure between a proton and an electron. This is the very lowest pressure you can create in the universe, right there, because everything leaks out. All the red stuff leaks out the black, and all the black stuff leaks out the red, so there's very, very little in here. The only stuff in this middle is the stuff that, say if a red comes in this way, it can be turned this way, so it can reflect off this red, give it a little push that way, and bounce back here, but then it's going to go out again. But there can be a little bit of pressure coming in that way. So a little bit of red can come in sideways here and go in, and a little bit of black can come in sideways this way and go this way. So there can be a little tiny bit of pressure, but it's the lowest pressure you can get, and that's what makes this stuff hard. That's very strong pressure. So you can understand that the field pressure, this shows you how dense the field is, is illustrated by how hard stuff gets. The hardness is an illustration of how strong the pressure is that's pushing them together. But it's not infinite. It's just silly. This is it. This demonstrates it to you. Find the hardest substance on Earth and that'll tell you that's as hard as it gets. There's no infinite. There's no infinite hard. That doesn't sound very good, but there really isn't. Alright, anyway. Alright, a point has no quantity and no time. Well, that's just stupid. I am looking to, as a thought experiment, thinking of time as a slice of Swiss roll. Well, that's just stupid. Time is just a function. It takes time for light to go from here to here. It takes time for gravity, the shadow, the change in the density of the pressure. Okay, say the pressure is 100% and then I put a shadow in. It takes a while for the 10% to get to the other place. It all moves the same speed. Magnetism moves the same speed. It takes time for the stuff to get from one place to another. I mean, magnetism is gravity. It's just going through the filter of the magnet. The magnet's a filter. The pressure goes in and it gets all the red stuff go this way, all the black stuff go this way. So damn simple. Anyway, as a thought experiment, thinking of time as a slice of Swiss roll. Well, I just don't. No. It's just a function. It was my comment on the tide thing. Well, it was a good comment, but I don't like this one much. I can't remember you using or mentioning the Kesmar experiment. It's not an experiment. It's a claimed phenomenon, right? I think it's a C word or something. But that doesn't even, it's so obtuse, but that gets to this vacuum energy thing, right? Because that's what they blame it on. And they use things like virtual photons. They invent virtual photons to explain why. So the idea is that, say, in different metals are going to have different densities and different. Well, look, the idea is you take two metal plates that have no charge, and they create a charge. Essentially, there's always some kind of charge, and so they use this to invent this whole idea that there's this vacuum energy in the universe, and that it always, there's somehow the field just has, even when it doesn't have any energy, it has energy, or some kind of bullshit like that. And it's just bullshit. Obviously, everything that has a neutron in it, okay, the neutron actually radiates forever, just like gravity. I mean, the fields created by these different particles, the changes they make to the field, is forever. It goes forever. And the strength, as I've pointed out, of the fact that there's, if you change the field around a proton, it will obviously magnify the effect of that change, because of this idea of the perpendicular thing, of it leaving perpendicularly. Anyway, I don't get it. I mean, it's just. So anyway, this is not this is not an experiment. It's just a realization that. Well, frankly, I don't even know what it represents, because there's no place you can even... The whole idea of saying something has no charge is ludicrous. Because the ground that we call no charge isn't really a no charge ground. It's not. It's not even close to of being a neutral charge. Because the ground's full of electrons and protons and atoms, and those atoms are always weighted proton heavy in terms of the molecular structure. And the only way you can compensate for that is with free electrons that you pile on the surface. But those are free electrons. So how you can't, there's no such thing as a zero charge. I mean, there's just no way to do that. You have to have no atoms to have zero charge. You have to have a non-atom to have no charge. A hydrogen atom has excess charge. You can't take the charge off because the proton has more charge than what's necessary to hold the electron. as I was trying to explain, even with gravity, its mass itself creates gravity. No, that's the wrong way. I don't want to get into that, but it creates the potential for it. I gotta always be so careful how I say that word. It doesn't create any. There's no imbalance until something moves into the field. Then the imbalance will be created instantaneously. No, no, don't use that word. As soon as it moves into the field, the induction of gravity begins. All right. So there's no such thing as measuring something as having no charge, because as soon as you put the measuring device anywhere near it, you're measuring a charge. But I on my phone, cheers. I don't know that. I don't know why your phone can't spell, but that's okay. Guess it's too much for it. It's over its whatever, its pay grade. So if someone creates a vacuum, oh dear, are you saying there is no gravity within it based on your ideas? I'm saying gravity is a push force. It comes from the outside. It's not a vacuum cleaner. It's not bent space. It's not sucking stuff in towards it. It's not pulling. There's an external field that pushes. And what I'm saying is creating an absolute vacuum is really difficult. And as I've pointed out, the closest you can get is the relationship between an electron and a proton, because then you can create, see, there's no red that can get to this proton from the external field because it all goes out perpendicular from the electron. There's none that can get trapped between them because it all goes out through the electron. You see? So no red pressure here. And the same is true for the electron. Any black coming this way goes out this way. Any black trapped goes out this way. So this is the lowest pressure you can get. That's why matter's so fucking hard. Okay. It's the force, the field pressure that's holding it together. The external pressure. And there's a tiny bit of pressure here keeping them from crashing into each other. And that's all there is. There's a little bit of pressure here and a ton of pressure here. And there's just no options for these guys once they're associated with each other. They don't have an option. They're stuck with each other unless you put a hell of a force to pop them out. Yeah. Alright. Yeah, once an electron gets close enough to a proton, it's not leaving easy. It's only the ones that are far out, far away from the proton, where then lots of red can go this way, and lots of red can go this way, and lots of black can get to the electron. See, the further away this electron is, then black over here can go this way and hit it. Lots of blacks can hit it in this direction and this direction, and so it can get away. But the closer it gets, the more impossible it gets to hit it at any angle. So the closer it gets, then the shadow becomes complete and nothing can get to the electron except something going this way or this way, and that would be even pressure. So it wouldn't be of any use in changing the equation. But anyway, this is happening in gravity also. I just have to explain. I just have to explain how you have to understand gravity as a nuclear force. Everything's moved this way. This is movement in the universe here. Matter moves because of electrons and protons, and the forces trapped are released between them. So if the force is released, the things move apart. If the force is compressed, then there's more pressure, and there's more reason for them to move away. So like, see, the idea is when, see, there's pressure coming in from all directions. Well, I don't want to do the why does it turn. See, I do it here. I explain how this doesn't necessarily move straight, because when this arrow comes